as I was walking the halls of the McCormick Place, where the Syro Malabar Jubilee Convention is being held, I saw a person in a rather fascinating and curious outfit. I thought he was in costume because I saw several Pope Leos in the halls, but I dared initiate a conversation with him, and as it turns out, he is a Cistercian priest or monk in the making. So let's ask a little bit more about his life. Let's get to know him. Hi, Brother Michael.
It's good to meet you.
Good to meet you too. So you are a Syro Malabar Catholic, as I understand.
Yes, yeah.
And you are now in formation to become a monk?
Yeah, that's true. So formation, I joined about 2 years ago, and my first year is called the novitiate year. And that year is you're in the monastery, you're not allowed to leave, you wear all white. And that's a year of really intentional prayer and discernment, getting used to the community gets used to you. And then after that, you take vows, simple vows they're called, vows to stay for a prolonged period of time. So this first set for 3 years, to write out the highs, to write out the lows, and to discern and listen to the voice of the Lord. After that, I'll renew that set of vows, and somewhere either at the end of that second set of 3 years or somewhere in the middle, I will take vows for life, solemn vows, permanent vows they're called, which are vows to stay in the community until death.
I'm actually curious to learn a lot more about this process of formation. But before that, I am even more fascinated that you, a Malayali, a Syro Malabar Catholic who grew up in the United States, who moved to the United States when you were really young, how such a person decided to renounce the world and decided to join a monastery, a community of monasteries, Cistercians, which is supposedly one of the most strictest communities. So what was the discernment process, and how did you end up choosing that life?
As much as I wish I could say I decided on it, I think that would be dishonest and thankfully not true. My vocation, my way of life is a gift that I received from the Lord. And so I think in many ways, maybe that's kind of a simplistic answer, but in prayer, to hear the voice of the Lord, right? The sheep know the voice of the shepherd, and to follow it wherever it leads is the heart of what makes any Christian vocation a Christian vocation, no matter what it looks like. And so for me, that came about in meeting the community. So the Cistercians that I've joined run a school in Irving, and I went to that school. And then after high school, I went to college in New York, which was about as far away as I could get, sort of like Jonah avoiding his vocation in some ways in the back of my mind. But when I came back in the summers or in the winters, I would go on retreat with the monks there. And even throughout that process, no matter where I was, if I stopped for just a moment, I would be able to hear the voice of the Lord calling me, beckoning me, inviting me, leaving me free to choose, but telling me that he had something wonderful and life-giving in store for me that I only had to follow. And so far I have, not particularly well, but I have followed it as much as I could. And so I'm very grateful.
As I can understand, the Lord definitely did put in you that seed, which is now sprouting and growing, which is amazing. And you also have the influence of Cistercians, among whom you did your schooling. But I want to talk a little bit about your family as well. What was your family background? Like, do you have siblings? Is it a big family? Was it really instrumental or influential in developing your prayer life and your spirituality?
Yeah, I would say it's a small family, right? So it's my mother, my father, and my little brother. My little brother is much younger than me, so he's about 7 years younger than me. And he also went to school at Cistercian. So even when I was gone, there was a connection there. And I think for my family, the faith was important. It involved going to Mass every Sunday, no matter where we were, whether we were at home, whether we were in vacation. It involved making extra sacrifices during Lent. It involved supporting each other as best we could in our practice of the faith. And I'm just supremely grateful for the priority that my father and mother made it to get a Catholic education, to receive a Catholic education. I went to Catholic school my whole life. And that's something that some of the popes have talked about as a right of every Christian to receive a Catholic education, if at all possible. And I think it yielded uncountable blessings in my own life. Just the way that formation seeped in to me, in ways that I'm conscious of and ways that I'm still discovering to this day. And so that's probably the greatest blessing that they gave me, besides the faith itself.
That's wonderful. And you ended up joining the monk. So, as I understand, Cistercians are a cloistered community, but that's not so in your case.
Yeah.
So, can you maybe explain the difference between the two different orders?
Definitely. So, the Cistercian order has a long and very complicated history, but I think I can get away with a short form that highlights four, I think, crucial moments. The first is in the 500s AD, when St. Benedict hears the voice of the Lord calling him to start a monastic order. And when he does that, he founds the order known as the Benedictines. Though, of course, he doesn't quite know that he's founding an order, he's just taking it one day at a time. And then later, in about the 1000s, a group of Benedictine monks recognized the need of the Benedictines to reform themselves, to grow in purity and in love for the Lord. And so they divest themselves of some of the worldly belongings that have crept up along the way and start a monastery and an order known as the Cistercians. Then in about the 1500s or so, there's a group of Cistercians in Hungary who are basically persecuted under the Austro-Hungarian emperor. When he does that, he basically accuses the monks of being unproductive and unhelpful to society, and also being sort of shady characters with hoods. And so he tells the monks that they need to find some sort of productive or useful labor. So the monks take over the schools that were usually run by Jesuits who had just left Hungary. So they filled in at these schools, which was kind of a natural fill-in. Monasteries, since even St. Benedict's time, were always places of formation where many people would drop off their kids to learn and to study. So there's language in the Rule of St. Benedict that goes all the way back to the Rule of St. Benedict about educating and what to do with the young who are there. So it was entirely in continuity with the tradition, but that also meant that they had to do certain things like cut off the hood and wear collars, and also take lives that were more active, that were devoted to the care of the whole person, spiritually, mentally, physically. And so that happened up until about the 1950s, which is when the persecution from the Soviet Union drove the Hungarian Cistercians out of Hungary and into the US, founding the community that I joined. The only one like it in the US, and maybe one of the few like it in the world.
Wow, that's actually really fascinating. And the next question is basically to satiate my own curiosity and also maybe inspire the young adults out there who might be thinking about this, who might be wondering what other orders are there to find, who are in the path to finding their own charisms. So what's a day like? What was a day like when you were in the first year of formation? And how does it change right now? And what do you think it'll be as you move forward?
Yeah, so the day of a novice, a first-year monk, is highly scheduled to make sure he doesn't get up to any trouble, or trouble doesn't find him. And it starts, as every morning does, with prayer in the chapel at 5:40 a.m. So every monk is required to be in there for 20 minutes doing private meditative prayer, Lectio Divina, so reading the scriptures. Then we start Lauds, which is the prayer that begins the first hour of the day, and followed by Mass. So that goes from about 6 to 7. Then we have breakfast in silence. And then the kind of work day begins, right? Where various monks are either starting their day at the school, starting their day at the university nearby, or studying if they're students or brothers in formation, start their reading or start their chores around the monastery, whatever it might be. We then reconvene again at noon when we have midday prayer, which is about 10 minutes, and then we all have lunch together, and then back to work until about 5:30, which is when we have adoration every day for 30 minutes from 5:30 to 6, and then we have vespers or evening prayer, followed by dinner, followed by night prayer, followed by recreation, when we all spend time together getting to know each other better, witnessing to the love of Christ. For the first year, for the novice, all throughout the day is sprinkled various meetings sprinkled throughout the week, really, meetings with their novice master, so the man who guides them and shapes them and gives them advice and also tells them things that are hard to hear. And then the second year, that starts meetings with the junior master, and then various elders of the monastery will make time for the young monks to teach them, to guide them, to shape them in those ways. This second year of the monastery, I started a lot more work outside the monastery. So that first year, you're kind of entirely limited to the monastery. And so now I've started going over to the school and teaching at the school where I teach the 6th grade religion class on sacraments. And so that's been kind of an exciting new dimension of my life, to bring the things, the fruits that I may have grown in that first year of the monastery outside. But one of the great blessings is that most of my life doesn't really change, and hopefully never will for the entirety of my monastic life. I will always be there for prayer in the church as best as I can, so long as my alarm clock actually rings at 5:40 in the morning, and I'll be there at the monks with night. And so some changes happen there for sure, but I'm glad that the essence, the monastic core, ideally doesn't change from the novice year all the way to the end.
I have a few more questions, just a few actually.
Yeah.
I think Cistercians, they confine themselves to that one particular monastery. They don't change their locations. I want to know if that is true, and I want to know if you miss the world, just the fancies and whims and all that the world has to offer, and just how do you find joy, complete joy, a satisfaction in the life that you're now in?
I think to your first question about, what was it about again?
I want to know if you will, that's fine. I want to know if you will forever remain in this community.
Oh, yes, right. So monks make, especially Cistercian monks, make a vow of stability, right? Which is a promise to stay stable to their community until death. And many of the monks are able to keep that. We, in fact, connected to the church, we have a crypt where we bury all the previous monks, all the monks who have come before. And I was touring the crypt with a group of middle school students. I was trying to guide them in a meditation on death, to consider that and to look forward to it, to try to. When one of the eldest monks in the monastery popped by, and he very solemnly, with a kind of smile on his face, pointed at the next empty grave and said, "There am I," which all the boys got a hoot out of. But one thinks about the vow of stability not as a chain to a zip code in some ways. So, for example, the Hungarian monks who were persecuted by the Soviet Union discerned from God through their superior that they had to leave Hungary to keep their way of life alive. And similarly, right now in our community, one of the monks temporarily, though the majority of the year, is not in fact in the monastery because he's in Hungary, trying to restore some of the Hungarian Cistercian identity that was lost. And so things tend to be complicated. The vow of stability is about the stability to a community. When our brother is over there working to restore the identity of those Hungarian Cistercians and help in whatever way the Lord is calling, he does so as a member of our community. He does so as one of us, stability to this family, to this way of life. And so it's a slightly more mysterious, though I think more substantial vision of what it means to be part of a community, right? No matter where you go, no matter what you might be doing, though the reality of the physical location is super important. And then to your point about missing the world all the time, I think that's why in one of our night prayers that the monks all say, they repeat this phrase from the Psalms, "What can bring us happiness, many say." And the psalmist talks about new wine, new food, right? And we can substitute all sorts of images in there, right? Of things that we've tried to fill the God-shaped hole in our hearts, things that we've chased after, things that we've misused, things that we've not understood as creatures of God. And the psalmist reminds us that only one thing brings the happiness that we need. And that's the Lord, right? His love, his heart gives us the happiness that we need. And so whenever those temptations rear their ugly heads, so to speak, I remember from my own experience, limited though it was, that, and still real, right? Even the monk, has to deal with nice food and the particular mug that he really enjoys, that none of those things really bring me the happiness that I crave, the happiness that I desire, the happiness that I was made and created for, the happiness that comes from God. And so I hope that in some ways by taking these vows, by divesting myself of the things of the world, I can be a sign to the boys that I teach, to the world that I love, that those things have their place, but they don't bring us happiness. And the happiness that we long for is just being poured out in abundance on us, and we can receive it and live in peace and enjoy all the days of our life.
Do you have markers on your graves?
Yes, we do. We do, in fact, have markers on our graves. We have our name, our year of birth, year of death. I think the Carthusians don't mark their
Okay.
graves, which is a huge sacrifice. But yeah, so we have a nice little row, and I'll go down there and remember a lot of the monks who taught me or played a role in my own formation, their lives, and I'll ask for their prayers. Yeah, so we do have marked graves.
I'm really fascinated, and I pray and hope that so many young men listen to this talk and realize that there is a wonderful world out there, not the world that you see, the external world, but a world of spirituality, a world of complete seclusion and love and joy of the Lord. And I'm so happy that I got to sit down with you, and thank you so much, and we'll keep praying for your vocation as well.
Of course, please pray for me. Know
Thank
that
you.
I'm praying for you. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you.